Welcome to another one of our videos. Today we're going to be doing a pretty quick one, hopefully, and that is going to be the replacement of the splash shield on my 2014 F-150 Raptor. This is one that gets pretty commonly torn up. I did this on my 2011 whenever I did my cooling system replacement. On my 2014, I have an off-road bumper on that truck as well, and it has gotten, this shield, I should say, has gotten absolutely obliterated by rocks and dirt and dust and so on. Plus this material kind of rots over time and falls apart. Should be a pretty simple job. The complexity in this is the fact that we have to take out the airbox, which shouldn't be too big of a deal, but I'll show you through the process. It makes it a little more complex than it otherwise could be, but we'll go ahead and roll through it and get it done. So, like I said, it should be pretty simple. This is OEM Ford part number BL3Z90944-A. I don't know if this part's made anymore. I was able to find this one, new old stock, but it was made a couple years ago as of the time of filming this video. There are aftermarket ones available that don't fit quite as well. I put one of those on my 2011 as well. So I'll put in the comment section down below, or sorry, in the description down below, both the OEM part number as well as a link at least to one of the aftermarket options that I've used in the past. So go ahead, hop on over to the truck and show you what we're working with in order to get this apart and get this new shield in. All right, so we're here under the truck, and really quickly before we get started, I just want to show you the issue area in question. You can actually see the leftover tab right here of what's left of where the shield attached underneath. I left that there, number one, out of easiness, but number two, so I remember exactly where that shield attaches. But then you can see if we look up through here, and I'll move it around, what's left of the shield. You can see it's just utterly obliterated, torn to pieces. It had another flap where this is all torn that was kind of just falling down here in front of the tire and everything. So I ended up just tearing that off in my driveway, so to speak. This needs to be obviously corrected pretty badly. So the shield is what helps keep some water and everything from going into the fender liner area and then up into the engine bay, as well as helps keep dust and dirt and debris and everything out from a little bit more critical areas in the vehicle, i.e. the engine bay. So I'm gonna go ahead and hop on up into the engine bay and show you what we're working with up there, because that's where the most of the work is going to take place. All right, so we're here in the engine bay now, and what we're going to have to do is basically remove the combination airbox and coolant bottle in order to get the airbox lower portion out and get to the fender liner. The liner that we were just looking at down there attaches in a few points. It attaches right here up front, it attaches right here, and then there's another attachment point actually back there behind the coolant bottle bracketry and everything there. So I believe all we have to do is take out these two bolts. I'll tell you what size they are whenever I actually get to that. But we're also going to need to take loose the mass airflow sensor and the coolant line over here as well in order to get that whole assembly out of the engine bay. Then we're going to pull the lower box, and then we'll actually be able to start work on replacing the splash shield. So not a ton of work, but it is some more than it otherwise could be, like I said. So I'm going to go ahead and set things up and kind of walk you through the process. Alrighty, so we're ready to go ahead and start on this whole removal process, and I think we're going to be able to do it here in one shot. So I went ahead and took out one of these bolts here. They're both 13 millimeters, but this one back here I took out just for ease of filming because it's a little more difficult to get to. If you don't have the proper tools to get to it without removal of the sensor, you can just remove the sensor. I believe this is a 10 millimeter bolt up here. That said, bolts removed, so all we need to do is take out this one in order to release the air boxes once we get the covers and whatnot off. Now the first step in removing the whole airbox assembly is getting the mass airflow sensor disconnected so we can then get the top airbox cover off like you'd be replacing your air filter. Now to do that, there's a little red clip up underneath here that you're gonna pull back towards you, and you should just be able to pull the connector off. Now I'm being very delicate with mine because my connector is actually cracked, but just be careful with that one so you don't damage yours if it's still intact. Now, in order to get off this top airbox housing after you've gotten the mass airflow sensor disconnected, it's rather easy. All you have to do is loosen this hose clamp up here. This is either going to be with a flat blade screwdriver, like you see me using, or it's going to be with a, I believe it's 7 or 8 millimeter socket, as long as you have a factory air intake. If yours is aftermarket, it may vary. And then we need to push on these bellows here, get the tube disconnected from the airbox lid, flip down the clamps that are down here. Hopefully you can see at least one of those. There's 3. And then, oops, we lift the airbox lid off of the airbox. Now I'm going to go ahead and flip the lid over off camera take out my air filter. Now I changed this to 160,000 miles, I'm at 168. Since I have this whole thing apart, even though I normally change these filters about every 10,000, I'm gonna go ahead and change that filter. It's quite dirty. So, now we're ready to pull the airbox out, essentially. We do have one more disconnection we have to make, and that's right here. I'm not sure if this hose clamp is factory or not. I can't remember based on my working on other trucks of the same generation. But if it is, flat blade screwdriver. If it's not, your mileage may vary. But you're gonna wanna go ahead and slip that over, if you have it, over the barb fitting there, and then pull this hose off. Now, we're gonna be fairly careful with this, and we may end up actually slitting this hose off. But that's one where, because it's got coolant in it, and it kind of flows around and cinches the hose to the coolant tank, it gets a little stuck. Let me go grab some pliers for that. All right, so if your hose is stuck, grab yourself some hose pliers. Go ahead and give the hose a twist in a couple different spots to break it loose. And I don't like to pull on hoses if I can avoid it. Those pliers, oh, and there we go. We got that hose loose. And interestingly, there's actually not a flared barb. It's just was that stuck. So we're gonna go ahead and get this hose just kind of looped out of the way. There shouldn't be a ton of coolant in here or anything. And in my case, there's not. This is just the coolant overflow bottle. So I'm gonna kind of get it tucked as best I can out of the way. There we go. And at this point, we should be ready to go ahead and pull off this last bolt and lift the lower airbox assembly out of the truck. Now, before I do that, there's one more thing that I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna go ahead and put a vacuum cap on the coolant reservoir. Now, the reason we just did that is probably pretty obvious, but we're gonna be tipping this thing out. I can't guarantee that I'm not gonna slosh coolant around and end up with it kind of sloshing or wanting to slosh out of this port. So I don't wanna dump coolant all over my engine bay. Therefore, I did what I did. So at this point, all we should have to do is loosen our 13mm bolt here. If memory serves correctly, this whole airbox is stuck inside a couple of bushings and will just kind of lift out. Although I know it's not the easiest thing in the world to pop out of place. That much I do remember. There we go. Now, one of the interesting things, and I would bring the camera over here if I could while I'm holding this whole airbox, but I can't, is that there's a big circular cutout inside the piece that we're replacing, the splash shield. The airbox actually has an elbow that's built into it that goes through that hole. And so we're kind of having to wrangle with that getting caught on the splash shield while we get this whole thing out of the engine bay. So I just did one last check, made sure we're not caught on anything. And we're just gonna slowly maneuver this out of the engine bay. It's a very good thing that we put that vacuum cap on, because we do have to tip it straight down. We would have just poured all of our coolant out. But that airbox is now out of the bay. I've got that sitting safely on the ground. And you can see we are here to our fender liner. Apologies for my hand blocking that. So you can see this thing is just absolutely beaten and eaten and torn to shreds. And that's why we're replacing it. And even some of these rivets are broken off here in the wheel well area, so it's a darn good thing we're replacing this. At this point, I'm gonna go ahead and take some plastic pry tools. I'll come back with those here in a second, a little bit of a clip, but come back with some plastic pry tools. We'll pop all these clips loose. I'll show you all of those in a little more detail and reposition the camera, and we'll have this liner out, be able to clean everything up, pop the new liner in, and wrap up. All right, well, this is the best angle I think that I can get as far as clip popping goes. But you can see a little bit better in here what we're working with as far as the clips go and just the carnage of this splash shield. This one's obviously 10 years old at the point of filming and is definitely past due. So, like I mentioned earlier, we have one clip here up front that you can't quite see on camera, but we're gonna go ahead and get the plastic pry tool. I'm just using this kind so we don't scratch the paint. Get it behind the Christmas tree clip and pop that sucker out of place, which is most of the time easier said than done with these guys. They are rather robust clips, and actually sometimes I found it easier to cut them and then take off the remaining portion of it on the back side, which may be what I do in that case. In the case of this right here, and probably this right here. Nope, that one just ripped off. This one we'll go ahead and get behind and see if we can get that pried out. There we go. So, just some prying to get that loose. Obviously another clip right here. That one's also on the stubborn side. There we go. Let's see if we can use this side. Yep, we can right down there. And I think that's it that's holding it in, even though there's two more clips. Actually, there's one right down here, and then there's the one that I showed you up underneath. And then I believe this one right here is also a big clip for that liner. You can see just how destroyed that old one was. So, I'm gonna go ahead and get these guys loose as well. They should just be really nice and easy to pop. And I'll get that one underneath popped as well. There we go. That's now on the ground. That's now on the ground. So I'll finish wrapping up, popping all these clips. I'll go ahead and do all my cleaning and stuff off camera, since I'm sure most folks don't want to see that. And we'll come back and I'll show you reinstallation and how we need to wrangle everything back into place. All right, so we have our new rubber piece here. Gonna go ahead and get it dropped into place. Let's see. Those guys go there and there. So we'll start with those clips, get those set. Get this dropped down in there. Get the front inner clip right there. Get these two right here and here, which it looks like I'll probably need to go up underneath for. So I'll do those clip ends off camera, and then I got to do the lower one as well. Once we get those guys clipped in though, we're gonna be ready to rock and roll and get the air box and everything back in. So you can see I cleaned up the general area. Obviously the new part's new, and then air box and everything I've got cleaned up and sitting ready to go back in. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish the clip ins, and we'll drop the air box in and cover anything we need to do to wrap up. All right, so you can see we have the air box back in. It's just set in place and it's fresh from being washed. Really, reinstallation of all of this is just reverse of disassembly. Like I mentioned earlier, I do recommend conditioning your hoses and cleaning everything out, especially the hose conditioning. If you have older hoses, just make sure that they're in as best a shape as possible without replacement, or if they need to be replaced, then replace them. But again, reinstallation is the reverse disassembly. If I come across anything, I'll mention it. Otherwise, I'll cut to the finished product here in a second. Okay, so we have everything complete now. Everything back in place, bolts tightened down, hose clamps tightened down, everything squared away. One thing I want to mention is, before we dive into showing you the final result there, as far as the apron goes, I noticed on the coolant bottle, some chalking and some micro cracking and stuff on the top in this area here. So I threw some plastic conditioner on it for now, but I'm definitely going to look at replacing that, since it's starting to actually flake away on the top. So just something to be mindful of and be aware of, as maybe needing to be replaced if you're working on this truck in general or in this area and doing its job. Anyway, like I said, everything back in place, mass airflow sensor patched up. You can see the liner right here, all nice and pretty. The hose tucked back exactly how it was, right in front of the liner here. And then up and over the airbox bolt there. And then down underneath, I will take the light down from my hood, and you can see down in here, the liner wrap around there. And if we look up through here, which is the difficult part to see through, you can see the liner right there, keeping a lot more out of the engine bay and wheel well. So, pretty easy job. I spent a little bit more time than most would just doing all the cleaning and everything and refreshing the coolant and so on and so forth. Got some nice fresh yellow coolant in there, or green, but Ford calls it yellow. Easy job though. With that, I want to thank you all for watching. Let me know in the comment section if you have any questions or comments down below, and I hope to see you in the next video. Take care.